In a distant village, where beliefs and superstitions lived side by side with reality, a story unfolded, full of both fear and hope. It tells of a mysterious healer, known by the people as Nikifor, and the dark forces rumored to be capable of driving a person to madness. That spring, old Tayana, a resident of this very village, became a source of deep concern for her granddaughter, Malada. The old woman's behavior grew strange. She mumbled something incoherent, ominous, and her gaze became clouded and alien. At night, Malada couldn't close her eyes, fearing her grandmother's unpredictable outbursts. There was no help to be found in the village. People shunned their family, considering them cursed. Malada, a kind-hearted girl, found herself isolated, her life turning into a nightmare of misunderstanding and loneliness. Once their family had been no different from any other. Now, Malada was desperate, unsure how to help her grandmother. Rumors of the healer Nikifor, a man endowed with a special gift to see the hidden and cure ailments, eventually reached her. They said he wandered from village to village, banishing evil and restoring health. One of the villagers mentioned seeing a similar man in a neighboring settlement across the turbulent river. Hearing this, Malada's spirits lifted. Unwilling to leave her grandmother alone, she set out at first light for the crossroads. There, by the old well, she left a small bundle of bread, an egg, and salt, a traditional offering to attract benevolent travelers. Circling the well 3 times, she whispered, "Let the strong and true, the clear-eyed, come and help." On the 3rd day, a tall man in a gray caftan, with a staff and a bag over his shoulder, appeared at the village edge. Despite the gray at his temples, he exuded immense strength. He walked confidently, as if he knew these parts like the back of his hand. Malada recognized him immediately, but with timid hope she asked, "Are you the wandering knowing one?" The man nodded mysteriously. "Was it your trouble that called me?" His voice was calm and velvety, his movements measured. A thick beard hid a scar on his face, and his eyes, full of wisdom, seemed a little sad. This was exactly how Malada had imagined the healer. Nikifor walked beside Malada along the narrow path. The wind carried the scent of dampness from the forest, and the birds were silent. "How long has your grandmother been unwell?" the healer asked without turning around. "I remember her strangeness since childhood," Malada replied quietly. "She avoided people, didn't go to church, and it only got worse with years. Sometimes she laughs to herself, sometimes she screams like a madwoman, she whispers blasphemous words, and her gaze is inhuman. I look into her eyes, and there's no life, no warmth, no kindness." Recently, Tayana destroyed all our livestock and the neighbors too. When I asked her about it, she just grimaced. "People are afraid of our house, they're afraid of me, thinking I'm the same. But it's not true. I'm scared the neighbors will take matters into their own hands against us." "And why do you live with her alone?" "Don't you have other relatives?" Nikifor inquired. "Besides my grandmother, I have no one left," the girl sighed. "My mother died when I was 12. Back then, my grandmother was still in her right mind, though I noticed her oddities even then. With each passing year, it grew worse. Her soul became completely alien to me." Nikifor stopped and looked intently at Malada. "An alien soul, you say? Many in your place would have abandoned such an old woman long ago. Why don't you leave?" "I'm afraid," Malada admitted. "But I also can't abandon her. She is my family, after all. How could I do that? And where would I go?" They approached the hut, which looked out of place among the other houses. The windows were sooty, the logs overgrown with moss. Nikifor crossed himself before the entrance. "Let's go see your grandmother," the healer said. Inside the hut, it was dark and stuffy, with an unpleasant smell of sulfur. The dwelling was modest, the furnishings simple, and the icons in the corner were covered with dirty cloth. Tayana sat hunched on a bench. Seeing the healer, her face contorted, and her eyes gleamed with malice. "What are you doing here?" she shrieked in a hoarse voice. "Get out of here, you stray dog!" Mulata flinched, but Nikifor stepped closer, looking directly into the old woman's eyes. "Quiet now, old woman," the healer said, unperturbed. "I'm only taking a look, but you are right to fear me." The old woman hissed like a scalded cat and began to speak in an alien voice, spewing curses. The words were confused and foul. Nikifor listened with a smile, his gaze unwavering. Then Tayana squeezed her eyes shut and froze, as if nothing had happened. What would happen next? Would the healer be able to help the poor girl and free her grandmother from the dark forces? Or would greater misfortune befall the village? "So that's how it is," Mulata stammered, her voice uncertain, as if trembling in the wind, addressing the local healer Nikifor. Nikifor simply nodded in affirmation. "There's clearly been interference from dark forces here, but let's not jump to conclusions. First, we need to carefully gather information to speak with the people." "And why is that? What new could they tell us?" The girl dismissed with doubt, seeing no point in questioning. "It's necessary," Nikifor cut in, his tone brooking no argument. "You surely still have old-timers who remember former times." After these words, the healer left the house and paused by the low wattle fence. Mulata, feeling an inner tremor, followed him. Nikifor noticed her state. "Don't be afraid," he said calmly, trying to reassure the girl. "I see that the roots of this story go far back into the past. We need to understand, find out what everyone remembers, and then we'll act." Together, they walked down the village street. Seeing Mulata and Nikifor, the elderly crossed themselves, as if warding off evil spirits. Women instinctively hid their children behind their backs. Mulata could not get used to such treatment, which she felt was undeserved. Many also disliked Nikifor, believing his abilities were not of divine origin. However, unlike Mulata, the healer showed not the slightest embarrassment. "I understand it's not easy for you right now," Nikifor said sympathetically, trying to support the girl. "But remember my words. When people encounter what they cannot comprehend, their fear multiplies exponentially. Imagination, fueled by this fear, knows no bounds." Mulata pondered his words. The villagers showed no desire to engage, shying away from them. Ahead, an old man with a missing arm appeared, his hair completely gray. He stared intently at Nikifor for a long time before daring to speak first. "I know what you want to know. I do. And I know people like you, Nikifor, though there are few of you left. Why hide my thoughts? Listen, healer, to what I say. From childhood, Tayana was an ordinary woman, nothing special. But over time, she got involved with evil spirits. She stopped going to church, cursed priests, and lunged at them. If anyone dared to enter her house, expect no good. As soon as Tayana cast her gaze, misfortunes began for that person. The old woman has an evil eye, words aren't even needed. My neighbor, a strong man, God-fearing, harmed no one. He possessed immense strength and was never ill. But as soon as Tayana looked at him from under her brow, he immediately fell sick. And he wasn't the only such case. I also remember how her daughter, Malada's mother, constantly suffered by her side, and her death was dark. It's even frightening to speak of it. Why frightening? What kind of death was it? Nikifor pressed, showing persistence. God forgive me. Whether it was by her own hand or not, I don't know. But when her body washed ashore, I was overcome with horror. I was fishing on the river then, and never expected such a thing. I think Tayana didn't spare her own daughter. The cursed woman destroyed her. But why? Who knows what the demons whisper in her ear? Nikifor listened carefully, only occasionally nodding. If I were you, I would have packed my things long ago and moved far away. People spread all sorts of rumors. Their hearts have hardened. Mark my words. Soon, there will be sin. All right, I'm going. I've told you all I know. Figure it out yourselves. Thank you, old man. Take care of yourself. The healer thanked the man for his frankness. What about my grandmother? Will you help her? Malada exclaimed hopefully, addressing the healer. Nikifor pondered for a moment, then replied to the girl, I still need to visit your church. At the old church, they were met by the village priest. He looked at the healer unfriendlily, but Nikifor still managed to strike up a conversation. What do you know about Tayana? Nikifor asked directly, wasting no time. The priest quickly crossed himself, as if warding off evil spirits. I know she is possessed. You two are somewhat alike, as if you communicate with the same entity. Don't stray from the topic, the healer interrupted, showing impatience. Don't speak of what you don't know. Rather, tell me about Tayana. Did you try to help her? I tried. But what's the use? I performed the exorcism ritual many times. I prayed. All without result. Apparently, the entity holds fast to the old woman. I remember when she was brought into the temple, she began to thrash on the floor, shrieking as if being cut with a knife. Then she sprang up and began to dart around the church, spewing foul words and overturning a candlestick with candles. The fire spread quickly. If we hadn't reacted in time, the church would have burned down. Where did an old woman get so much strength? It took 5 of us to barely restrain her. However, it's understandable. The demon inside is wreaking havoc. Since then, I forbade her from entering the temple. She herself avoids it, as if afraid. As you see, healer, there's no helping her now. Only her outward appearance remains of the person she once was. Nikifor frowned, expressing his displeasure. You gave up quickly. As soon as it became difficult, you retreated. All right, I understand everything. The healer turned to Malada and said, The origins of her trouble go back in time, I see it. Your mother knew about this. Unfortunately, you cannot ask her now. Malada, did she say anything to you on the eve of her death? The girl lowered her eyes and shook her head negatively. I don't remember anything special. Years pass quickly. Think carefully. Don't rush. Nikifor and Malada left the church. It was already dark. Although there was something, the girl said quietly, as if recalling something important. The day before Mom left and didn't return, she mentioned, Your grandmother got involved with evil a long time ago. That's why we have so many troubles. But Mom always told me to take care of Tayana, to look after her, no matter what. She said the time would come to decide. You'll understand when. I didn't pay attention to her words. What kind of evil? What do I need to decide? I was little and didn't understand. And it wasn't all as bad as it is now, until Mom died. That's when dark clouds began to gather over our village. The moment of truth had arrived for Nikifor, All the pieces of the puzzle had fallen into place, but final confirmation was needed. The wise man waited until night enveloped the surroundings in its gloom. Tayana left the house and headed deep into the forest. Taking advantage of her absence, Nikifor and Mulata entered the hut. "Stay by the door and watch the surroundings," the healer instructed. "If you notice anything suspicious, give a signal." The girl obeyed without question. The knowing one began to examine the dwelling, as if an invisible force guided him along a trail. Behind the icons, he discovered a small pouch with bird bones, and behind the stove, an inconspicuous bundle. Unwrapping the cloth, he saw hair intertwined with herbs and a scarlet ribbon. "This is it," Nikifor whispered. "Echoes of ancient sorcery. I've encountered something similar before." Mulata didn't understand what her companion meant. "Is it connected to evil forces?" "You could say that," Nikifor confirmed. "In her youth, your grandmother got involved with dark forces. Such bargains never bring good. And I'm sure what we found is just the tip of the iceberg. She made a pact with darkness, and it seems she achieved what she desired. But it's naive to think there's no price to pay. That's where your troubles began. Her soul, stained by darkness, suffers, and her mind succumbs to alien influence. Your mother became a bargaining chip in this pact with evil, for which she paid with her life. And Tayana became a puppet in the hands of evil. The gloom within her grows, entangling her ever more tightly. Mulata, unable to contain her emotions, turned to the wall, weeping. What was so important that she begged the demons for, that she was willing to sacrifice my mother? It no longer matters. She got what she wanted, but it brought no happiness. Mulata, this happened a long time ago, the healer soothed. Your grandmother was young and inexperienced, overcome by some need. And dark forces don't immediately reveal the price of a bargain. There is no creature more cunning. "But does that excuse her?" the girl whispered, hunched over in grief. Nikifor placed a hand on her shoulder. "In youth, everyone makes mistakes, big and small, sometimes fatal. Your grandmother likely didn't think about the consequences, and dark forces are skilled at clouding minds. When I looked at Tayana beneath all that devilry, I saw a tormented soul. She suffers, yearns for freedom, but remains imprisoned. Believe me, I've seen many such people. None of them could imagine how their foolishness would turn out. Now we must decide what to do with Tayana next." The girl calmed down a little, and the healer once again surveyed the hut, sighing heavily. "Everything here is permeated with rot and the stench of graves. The evil won't rest until it takes Tayana's entire lineage. You are in danger, Mulata." The girl shivered and looked around. "But don't worry. I will try to cast out all this defilement from your grandmother. However, the ritual can be dangerous for her. Her body is old and tormented. It might not withstand it." Mulata tensed. "All right, there's nothing more for us to do here. We need to prepare for the ritual." Stepping outside, Nikifor and Mulata heard angry shouts and a horrifying wail in the distance. "That's Tayana," the girl shuddered. "It seems we no longer have time to prepare." "It has begun." The healer sighed and rushed towards the cries. "Mulata, don't fall behind." Reaching the village outskirts, they saw the local residents surrounding the old woman, with several men trying to hold her in place. Others hurled mud, stones, and sticks at her, anything they could get their hands on. Tayana howled like a wounded animal, struggling to break free. The sturdy men could barely control her. Stop! You can't do this!" Mlada cried out and rushed to her grandmother's aid. But she couldn't push through the dense and enraged crowd. Then Nikifor stepped forward, pushing men aside, and entered the circle. Standing opposite Tayana, his shoulders broad, he made everyone freeze. The healer raised his palm to the sky and declared, "Enough! You will only amuse the Dark Ones sitting inside the old woman. What you plan will achieve nothing. You will only defile your own souls." Then Nikifor continued, "There is a way to cleanse her, to cast out the demon, though it will not be easy. The ritual can burn away the defilement, but it might destroy the body. Anything could happen." Mlada finally broke through to Nikifor. Before her, her possessed grandmother writhed. "Destroy the body?" the girl exclaimed. "No, don't destroy her. Perhaps there's another way to help her." Nikifor remained silent. The crowd erupted. "What do we care?" someone shouted. "She ruined all my livestock with her evil eye." "Yes, that's right. Better to put her in the ground now." Others supported. Nikifor raised his hand again, silencing everyone. "Do not take sin upon your souls. If you destroy Tayana, the evil will only be freed and spread to all of you. You will only make things worse for yourselves. I will perform the ritual as it should be, and you stand by and do not interfere." The crowd quieted, but discontent still hung in the air. Mlada stepped closer to the healer and squeezed his hand. In a quiet plea, like rose petals falling from a branch, the girl's voice trembled. "Please do everything possible to keep her safe. She is the last fragment of my family, the only thread connecting me to the past. I have no one else left. I beg you, Nikifor." In response to her entreaty, the man met Mlada's eyes, filled with tears and despair. "I cannot make unbreakable promises, but I swear I will do my utmost to protect her. Now we must take her home. I need time to prepare thoroughly." Closer to midnight, at the very edge of the village, a huge bonfire was erected at the healer's instruction, its flames soaring into the dark sky. Villagers gathered around, their faces a mixture of fear and hope. Nikifor, like a shepherd leading a lost sheep, brought the old woman out of her humble hut. Her eyes were clouded with a dark blackness, as if reflecting an abyss. Tying her hands behind her back, he led her to the ritual site. Tayana, like a wild beast in a cage, constantly tried to break free, to escape her inevitable fate. She tried to evoke pity, then spewed threats, like a snake preparing to strike. But the wise man, like a rock, remained unperturbed, paying no attention to her words, or rather to the voice of the demon speaking through Tayana. The healer seated the tormented old woman at the base of the bonfire. He stood opposite her, like a warrior ready for battle. He scattered herbs on the ground, as if creating a magic circle, and threw the bones from the old pouch, along with the contents of the bundle found in the hut, into the fire. All of it hissed and crackled in the flames, as if awakening ancient forces. A thick, bitter smoke rose into the sky, like a harbinger of something ominous. Nikifor began to read ancient incantations in a long-forgotten language, his voice tense and focused. Each word that escaped his lips was imbued with sacred meaning and echoed through the space, as if awakening the spirits of ancestors. At first, Tayana was silent, like a lurking beast. But then she suddenly arched her back and let out a horrifying scream in a low, guttural voice. "Get out, knowing one. She's mine, do you hear? I won't give her to anyone, you wretch." The people in the crowd stirred like a disturbed beehive. someone began whispering prayers, seeking protection from higher powers. Mlada, overcome with terror, rushed to her grandmother, but Nikifor, like a stone wall, pushed the girl away. "Do not interfere," the man said gruffly, his voice full of determination. The old woman continued to thrash and struggle, her face contorted into a horrifying grimace, like a mask of madness. She snarled like a hungry wolf, ready to tear its prey apart. But Nikifor did not stop, as if possessed, only continuing to chant the incantation louder, breaking into a shout that contained all his will and power. Suddenly the flames shot upwards, like a fiery whirlwind, and for a moment it seemed as if black smoke rose from the old woman herself, like a volcanic eruption. She howled piercingly, like a wounded animal, and almost immediately fell to her knees as if broken by a storm. Tayana trembled as if in a fever, muttering something to herself, but her words were unintelligible. Nikifor, like a hunter pursuing his prey, stepped forward decisively and silently placed his palm on her head, as if trying to hold her in this world. The old woman trembled even harder, as if an electric shock had passed through her body. Somehow, she managed to break her bonds and grab the healer's hand, like a drowning person clutching at a straw. But he did not flinch, his face remaining impassive. "You have no business here," the knowing one whispered, as if coaxing a lost soul. "I feel you fear me, and rightly so. Be afraid. Leave the old woman in peace. Otherwise, I will banish you to oblivion." "You're vile!" the old woman screamed, her voice full of hatred and despair. "Go back to your darkness," Nikifor insisted, like a warrior standing guard. "There's no point in resisting. You're weakening." Mlada stood behind, watching the scene unfold like an audience member at a theater of the absurd. She was terrified, as if caught in a nightmare. She barely restrained herself from screaming, as if afraid to break the fragile balance between good and evil. The healer took a small flask from his bag and sprinkled its contents on Tayana, like holy water. The old woman groaned in pain as if the liquid was burning her skin, like acid eating away flesh, and then she went limp and fell to the ground, like a broken doll. She breathed heavily, but for the first time in a long while, her eyes were clear, as if the sky had cleared after a storm. She looked at Mlada, and with trembling lips uttered her name, "Mlada, my granddaughter." The girl, as if freed from shackles, wept and embraced her grandmother, as if trying to shield her from the whole world. Nikifor, tired, wiped sweat from his brow, as if after hard labor, threw the flask into the fire and addressed the astonished crowd, like a prophet delivering truth. "That's it. There is no more defilement in her, as if a snake has shed its skin. But she does not have long to live. Her soul is eaten away, as if by worms, and her flesh is completely weakened. She should have departed long ago. Such was her fate, but Tayana cheated it, as if playing with life. Such was her desire. The Dark One helped her in this, as if offering a bargain. But now at least she can die free, like a bird released from a cage." Mlada, like a guardian angel, helped the weakened old woman to her feet. Suddenly, the villagers began to grumble discontentedly from all sides, like disturbed bees. People exchanged glances, their faces grim and dark, like storm clouds before a tempest. "They're fooling us, can't you see?" someone shouted, as if trying to awaken the others. "It's all a trick, like a magician performing a feat. The demon won't leave that easily." "That's right," another echoed, like a repetition of someone else's words. "Even our priest, couldn't do anything, as if he was fighting windmills. And he's a servant of God. We should burn her to be sure, so she doesn't suffer or torment others. Several burly men stepped forward, like wolves scenting prey. Their eyes burned with hatred, like embers in a furnace. Malada, like a shield, covered her grandmother. "Don't you dare!" she cried out, like a wounded bird. "She's a living person. She's not evil anymore." But the crowd had completely lost its mind, like a herd without a shepherd. One of the men roughly twisted the girl's arms and pulled her aside, like a captive. Another grabbed the old woman by her hair and dragged her towards the fire, like a sacrificial victim. Tayana no longer had the strength to resist, as if her will was broken. "No, don't! What kind of people are you?" Malada screamed hysterically, as if in agony. "How can you even consider yourselves human after this? Let her go, I beg you, spare her." Nikifor, like a detached observer, watched the scene unfold, his face inscrutable. Then he raised his staff above his head, like a magic wand, and struck the bonfire with all his might, as if trying to stop time. The flames swayed like a living creature, and sparks flew in all directions, like stars falling from the sky. The crowd fell silent, as if deafened by thunder. His voice boomed, authoritative, like a voice from above. "Stop right there!" The wise man shouted, like a commander giving an order. "The girl is right. Look at yourselves. How can you consider yourselves devout people? You want to drive out demons from this unfortunate woman at all costs. But look at yourselves, dancing to their tune like puppets, ready to tear her apart like hungry dogs. I've said my piece. The darkness has left Tayana. There are no more demons in her. Leave the woman alone and let her say goodbye to her granddaughter properly. I'm warning you only once. Whoever raises a hand against Tayana and Malada will be the first to face terrible misfortune." "Do you want to call the Dark One back again? I won't clean up your mess. Go home and live as if nothing happened. Is that clear to everyone?" Tension hung in the air. People shuffled, exchanging uneasy glances, but no one dared to object. The peasants gently lowered the elderly woman to the ground, as if she were a fragile burden. "Disperse," I said. Nikifor's voice, amplified by his anger, sounded like a command. "Return to your lives. It is finished." The crowd slowly began to thin, carrying with it the remnants of its former agitation. The bonfire, dying nearby, seemed a symbol of passing time. Nikifor exhaled with relief and turned his gaze to Malada. "Take her home. I told you, you have a little time left to say a proper farewell." Malada carefully laid her grandmother in bed and sat beside her, her gaze unwavering. The healer, like a guard, stood motionless by the window, lost in thought. Outside, dawn was breaking, painting the sky in soft hues. Tayana remained silent for a long time, studying her granddaughter intently. Then, for the first time in years, filled with pain and suffering, she uttered words full of tenderness. "Thank you, Malada. If you can, forgive me for everything." Malada responded with a faint smile, but her eyes filled with tears. She stroked Tayana's hand, feeling life ebb from her with each passing minute. Several hours later, Tayana quietly closed her eyes and stopped breathing. Malada continued to sit beside her, unable to restrain her sobs. Nikifor began to prepare for his journey, his movements calm and assured. "It's all right. The most important thing is that you had a chance to say goodbye. That is what matters most," he said, as if comforting her. "Don't be afraid of anything, Malada, and don't repeat the mistakes of your ancestors. Don't seek help where much is promised, but the price is hidden. The girl listened to his words in silence, her gaze fixed on Tayana's face. When she came to her senses and wanted to thank the healer, she found that he had vanished. She released her grandmother's cold hand, wiped away her tears, and ran outside. But Nikifor was already gone without a trace. Over time, the gossip behind Malada's back ceased, and the village left her in peace. She remained alone, but found the strength to accept her solitude. However, the thought lingered that she had never managed to thank the healer. She tried to find out where he could be found, but no one gave a concrete answer. Then the girl decided to embark on a search. She followed Nikifor's tracks, but could never catch up with him. The wise man never stayed long in one place. Something invisible guided him forward. Something ordinary people could not explain with words. Nikifor was always on the move, appearing where his help was most needed.